I just want to flash my book, if you can see it, Truth Be Bold. It's my latest, it was my last book that was published. I'm not going to read from that. I'm reading pandemic poems that I wrote since March. And I'm going to read, except for the last one, all of these have been published in a journal in the past year. So I'm going to start with the first one I wrote, the first of two I wrote, called The Soft Middle Space During a Pandemic. It was published in Poetry and COVID. To go insane, I would talk to my mother daily, and she's dead, so this makes it easier. If I had not taken the woman's hand to help her down from the ledge where she sat when she asked for help, I would be bereft. There was no one for miles that warm morning, and yes, there was already coronavirus warnings. Don't touch, wash your hands, stay inside. But I reached out, took her swollen red hand, soft and warm to touch. She thanked me after she moved to the sidewalk with my support, grateful, thank you, in a low, vulnerable whisper. No virus separated us. I would be delusional if I believed myself invulnerable or impenetrable to disease or to this virus. If too calm while the world panics. It's hard to stay centered, easier to be preoccupied but not ignore, to stay in that soft middle space. It was a frenetic party at the piano bar, the young women celebrating, sparkling at their table, day glow pink, neon blue, jet black, shock yellow, and manic orange hair, drinking martinis and dancing to the music. They were not sheltered in place, and we were travelers celebrating with the locals on the Riverwalk, enjoying those moments before the seriousness of separation began. It is observed to enter a quarantine too easy, to not expect to get sick, to assume you will not die, while hundreds of thousands are infected and notices of death increase on your Facebook feed. I came back to my hotel and washed my hands after helping the woman step down from that ledge. My fear did not stop me, and that is inhumane, for she might have sat forever. Weeks later, no one touches. I talk to my dead mother, tell her I'm okay, that the streets are empty. Somehow she knows this is strange. She understands my fascination with the streets, how I never stayed home, but ran away, far away from her, searching for safety, for other. I also wanted to, I forgot at the beginning to give a shout out to John Gorski, who invited me, who won the inauguration prize on the night of the inauguration reading we had at CMP. And John, as part of his prize, got to designate 2 people to be featured, and he chose me as one of them. So that's one of the reasons I'm here, and I really appreciate that, John.
Thank you.
It's been a while. You're welcome. Great. This other one was also published in Poetry and COVID. It's called The World is Shifting. My friend tells me he's 71 and no man in his family has ever lived that long. So if Corona takes him, he's fine. But in this new age of longevity where 70 is the new, 50? The ages keep sliding because it's all relative and we're living longer. I don't want my friend to die. We're all gay and we all have dreams and goals, things to say and write. I canceled my trip east this June to visit him in Hell's Kitchen. He says the marriage business is dead. There's no official law against marriage. Many are changing their plans. My trans friend and his partner had a pandemic wedding. They wore matching masks. And on the Ave today, a bride in a bridal gown and her groom in a black suit stood in the grubby street waiting for Thai takeout for their reception. The tradition of marriage continues even in a pandemic. We must never give up hope until it is time to jump to the next reincarnation. Let's not use this virus for an excuse. I don't know if that friend made it to the reading, but he was invited. And he does weddings, so that's the wedding connection came in with that poem. And then this one, I was very glad to have this one accepted and published in the Seattle Review of Books. Right before they went on hiatus, they did a series of pandemic poems to sort of close out their online wonderful newsletter that was a prize winning here in the city of Seattle. Before Sheltered in Place. A new language being built. It started with prepare for social distancing. Then the order, shelter in place, a quarantine to protect others. The paint company rep showed up with a mask. For my safety, he said. Of course. Hands chapped from washing, super aware of sneezes, coughs, sniffles as never before. At the airport, in a crowded waiting area, this new world burgeoning. The man next to me moved because the man next to him snored. The woman next to me sniffled in regular intervals. All this sudden hyper-awareness, the germs that might be on the edge of the plastic cup I hold. Coconut milk, I bought at the Mexican bar. It tastes so good. I will not let my life be ruled by fear of germs. Everyone obsessed with hand sanitizer, making their own, buying alcohol, cleaning supplies, toilet paper to excess. We are in a frenzy, red states against blue states. And someone will decide who dies, and only the rich get test results. And everyone is going online, and yes, creativity is soaring, exploding. But we forget the children who will die without their parents. I walk on the plane seeing red. This is the first of 3 that the Journal of the Plague Year took, and I'm going to read all 3 of them. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that journal, but they've been doing wonderful pieces, political and about the pandemic since it started, and I feel very pleased to have been published by them. Paul Nelson also had a poem about the pandemic published by them a bit ago, but mine came out really early. This is called What They Mean When They Say Worried Well. When I learned my status, therapy seemed a good plan. One appointment, and I knew he was not the right fit. He told me I would have to stay where I worked. What? And then he said I was one of the worried well. What? This didn't fit my vision. It felt presumptive, a lie. And what the fuck was worried well? I looked it up. Now, with COVID-19, I hear this phrase again on the news for those not sick but anxious. This broad stroke category wipes away feelings. It tidies and organizes. You're fine, one of the worried well. In fact, you might make trouble. Take too many tests, use supplies others need. Back then, HIV meant death. The phrase confused me. Was I well? Hard to know with a retrovirus inhabiting my body. Everyone lives on a spectrum of health and neuroticism. Worried well, 2 contradictory words. An erasure that negates, gives you back the problem, your worry. If you weren't so worried, you'd be well, or you'd be fine. Well, I'm fine, less anxious about this new virus than most around me. I survived a deadly disease 30 plus years, became a therapist, and will not label those who shake with fear. Death is a well we fall into, and worry is a prophylaxis, like a placebo, to help us grow strong, take precautions, find answers. I found my way in the maze. Friends and chosen family died. My web broke each death. We must sit and listen, hold gentle our brothers and sisters, ask what they need, how they plan to get where they're going, despite illness and fear. Find channels that soothe, breath, words, writing through the nervous system onto the page. Send anxiety into the earth. Move on the continuum, sickness to wellness. Find the mindful present, feel the body in toes and feet, seek calm. I never returned to that therapist. It was 1990. I got a master's, moved to my next job, and my next, opened a private practice. My retrovirus and I are well, not worried. The second one from that particular journal was choices during a health crisis. I've had my share of the I'm dying lament. I'll not go there with this new pandemic. I lived through one war, AIDS, worked and lived through death up close. People take risks. Bug chasers fuck to get HIV. That old story. Citizens throw corona parties to get sick, build immunity. They make decisions irrespective of rules or science. Meet with a friend, walk in a park, conscientious. I will shelter in place within reason, unafraid. My body strong despite a retrovirus I've learned to live with 30 years. No known reason why I survived. People criticize those who exercise free will, speak with judgment from fear, become vigilante citizens, fight with store clerks who request they wear a mask. In the Philippines, they shoot offenders of shelter in place. We must ask new questions, find unconventional answers. Remember our history. Listen to those who survived stigma and shame. It's time for massive change before we proceed. Our planet, slow now with clear skies. And the third that's in the Journal of the Plague Year, daily caution during a pandemic. Do we go to the store for pasta, the one and only item we need, or not? What is the chance of catching COVID-19? How many in my local market are carriers? Am I protecting them or me? Aware of every sniffle, sneeze, cough, the breath of my lover in my face when we go to bed, I turn away, push my back up against him. He is my pandemic pal, lucky to have a body connection, not alone. We work from home, get along. This is not our first test, not even the second in our long history. May we continue to thrive. This one was published in Global Poemic, 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 so Poemic, I guess. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. Dragons with long tails. Oh yes, I'm sheltering in place and social distancing, watching life energy drain into germophobia. A grandmother screams to protect her cart at the grocery store. Sanitizer, the new king. We stand 6 feet apart on sidewalks marked with chalk. We wait to enter a store or the farmer's market. Move forward with encouraging statements. You're getting closer. 3 double steps till almost there. We avoid elevators, the rule, 2 at a time. On watch, eyes down, for direction arrows in supermarket aisles. But I lived through AIDS, know how to slip on a mask. I'm not afraid of this virus. And then I'm going to read, I have 2 more. I think I'm doing okay on time. So these last 2 are not published. And this one comes out of the time of the fires during the summer. Fires burn our tomorrows. I'm grateful for that final box of nectarines from Mama Farm this late summer, before the fire razed their buildings to the ground, swept through their orchard. The inner heat, those oh so sweet nectarines, when we know all has changed. We will ourselves into this new world, climate in disarray, a world filled with disbelievers, a wild and free world where only the grounding of cherries, peaches, nectarines, melons, the countdown of fruits from early wild salmon berries, raspberries, blackberries, then blueberries, will buoy us. Fields swelter, taking our bounty, our tears alive with sorrow. Only summer's sweet fruit will save us, captured savor against winter's cold ice. We are an ungrateful tide, expressing disbelief against this earth's plenum, bountiful as a basket of luscious ripe strawberries, a variety that no longer exists. So many children burned in our fires of disbelief. They will never know that first taste, that burst and pop that makes us smile, what we remember that protects us from storms that steal tomorrow's pleasures. And this is the last one, and hopefully more on a hopeful note. It's called What Gives Hope. The miracle might be we emerge from this a better world with a clearer vision, higher priorities, a closer connection to each other. That we might learn to live together in peace, a new emphasis on healing the pain our ancestors perpetuated with slavery. We've been isolated in this pandemic, thrown online to meet. Contact, the most important social soothing. Cyberspace, not the body to body we yearn. Nuance obscured with distance. Awash in protest with condoned police violence, still some are hopeful. It is clear now, essential workers are expendable. We are here to return our blood to the earth by rule of their volition. Let us be drained like a slaughtered deer, or die in hospitals from COVID-19 intubated. In the streets we have always died, our blood, our breath obscured with no mercy, a clamp on the poor with no clout. Unlike those who prosper from crisis, we, the little ones, with jobs lost, income gone, family dead from systemic violence. These pressured times we've always lived through. Yet some have hope and fire to burn, the young, who only knew Obama their first 8 years. They follow behind, yet to lead on the front line of change that is coming. And oh, to have their fresh votes, their wisdom, their vision.
So I'm going to start by reading 2 pandemic poems as well. Interestingly enough, I haven't written a lot of pandemic poems. I feel that I'm so much in it right now, and I don't know why. It's just I think it's very it's upsetting times. And but anyways, I have 2 poems on the pandemic, and then I have more and more and more. So I'll start with, and they're different. I feel they're a lot different than what Julene read, which was really profound and insightful. That they just have a different. I don't know what's different about them. Maybe you do. So I'll start with the first one. It's called Crowned. And it starts out this way. Green stems straightly stand, proudly poised with golden crowns, daffodils joyously reaching towards the sun. Spring is here, spring is here. And as they take part in nature's spectacle, like all glorious greenery, they know nothing of a virus that is also crowned, creeping and crawling, stealth and insidious, taking more human life each with each passing days, bringing humanity to its knees. Yet the daffodils reach for the sun, the trees are draped with canopies of blossoms, the skies are the sky is aflutter with songbirds. It's not for nature's miracle to mourn the losses of humanity. So one. And then next, this one's called The Gift. Um, Scarlett, seriously ill since 3, now 13, watches the sky with marvel. World tainted with a respiratory virus, claims lives prematurely. Scarlett, not tainted with judgment, sees no stigma in illness or the modern day plague. Scarlett sees the souls who the virus takes, sees pure, unadulterated beauty, prisons of light and glory floating skyward, feels their wisdom wash over her. Scarlett senses the imprint of each soul, feels its unique vibration. Scarlett is gracious, knowing that each soul is leaving the world with the same innocence it came into the world with. Others see the sky, some sense wonder in the air, but Scarlett who sees the souls, but it is Scarlett who sees the souls, even though her illness scraped the sight from her eyes a decade ago. Okay, this is another one that's on the darker side. It's called The Argument, and the speaker in this poem is describing what happened to her. Is really guilt-based after the argument. So the argument, wearing it like a corset of thorns, poked, prodded, and pierced by a tyranny of guilt and shame. I shouldn't have said, I shouldn't have yelled. I should have said, what's wrong with me? Days pass, cut raw as brambles twine around me under my corset of thorns. I move to the left. I'm not to blame. You were wrong. The thorny twine tightens, ripping into my festering wounds. I shift to the right. Is it possible that we were both wrong? The thorny twine tightens a little less under my corset of thorns. I hurt you. You hurt me. I forgave you days ago. Smelling the stench of infection, breathing the rancid air from my torso, I know that I must forgive myself to free myself from my corset of thorns. Okay. This one's a lighter poem because I think, you know, I think I like to mix it up. I don't know. Black and white photograph, Today I picked up an old tattered photograph. There you were, a thin young man with a gently arched back, blowing bubbles on the seventh floor balcony of the Elmo Apartments. Bathed in joy, in sun and joy, your bubbles formed a gentle arc. With magnificent prisms and splinters of light, they floated like wishes, like possibilities into the universe. Looking at that photograph, I know that you brought joy into the world. Your story was formed on the gentle arc of your smile years ago. Okay, that one's gone. This one, I think it's on Kuhn's website. It's called Lost, but I kind of like this one, so I'll read it to you. When I was young and wild and joyful, I met a mystic sage. She had a dark and golden heart and promised me endless light. Being greedy and wanting more happiness, I barely listened to her song and blissfully followed her as she spiraled down. To, to uplift you, she told me, I will take you through the deepest darkness, blackest blight, searing sadness. And when you rise, you will break the surface like a swimmer bursting into the light. Following her down, I became lost and in infinite night and piercing pain and tireless tragedy. Without the sage, doubt and panic overtook me, knowing I would never be the same. But I thought, lost, going up, lost, going down, and up and down again and again. And years passed this way as I fought to break the surface. And sometimes I thought I saw the light. Other times I was drenched in darkness. And each time I was near the light, I healed a little. And then I realized the light was not happiness, but wisdom. I don't know how I'm doing for time. Am I doing okay? Or would you like me to stop or?
I don't know how you're doing for time either. I've made it a commitment to not track time anymore, and I'll leave it up to each of you to stay within what you think is, the right time for you.
Okay, I'll just read a couple more, if that's okay. Um, Hurt house. This one's very short. It's about a house, obviously. Wounded stands the house, heavy with hurt, crooked blind stare, blankly outwards. The joy the house knew evaporated, violent in an argument that the residents had. Kind of argument that means, I never want to see you again. But somewhere in the house, a shaft of light sneaks in through a crack in the shutters, and the house remembers joy. Okay, this one's a kind of like this one is called Flowers, but it's kind of like one of those Carlos Williams poems where he eats the grapes and as he writes the note. It's pretty simple, but I think it's kind of interesting, and maybe some of you have done this too. This is just to say, so it starts out William Carlos. This is just to say that today I bought flowers for you, to say that I'm sorry. They are a brilliant shaped orange like the sun, but then I realized that it is you who needs to say sorry to me. I kept the flowers for myself. So that's just kind of like one of those ones, I ate the grapes. Sorry about that, that it happened. I'm going to read you this one. You might think it's strange, but I'll read it to you because I like Greek mythology, and this is kind of like Icarus is one of my favorite characters, and he flies up and he touches the sun, and doesn't go so well. So here we go. Touching the light. Like Icarus, I flew close to the sun with feathers bound by wax, but I did not crash to earth. I lost something I loved to do. My leg was put together with titanium screws and plates. Like Humpty Dumpty, I had a great fall, and all the king's men and surgeons pinned me together with scalpels and pins. And all too soon I ran again, running was flying to me. And so I ran on leafy green trails, over hills, beside streams. When I ran, I could touch the light and became part of the rhythm of light. I sunk blissfully into synchronicity, the rhythms of light coursing through my veins, harmonious with the universe and all that is beautiful. Unlike Icarus, I had many flights, but eventually injury led to injury, and I could no longer touch the light. Having touched the light, having felt synchronicity with the rhythms of life, I hunger to go back, but I would be a fool to regret touching the light because now I know it's possible that nature sings its own songs. And I sort of Robert Frost, I felt part in this for a short time. Well, I could read more, but
Well, this is called Two Bedtime Stories. They're short poems. The only two things I want you to know is the bedtime for me has always been uh, something I want to avoid. It's like it's like death to me, a kind of death. And so I think I've written probably my fair share of those poems. I haven't read hardly any of them, but they sort of preoccupy mine. The other thing is the one thing, not the most thing I miss the most, but one thing I do miss from last year because of COVID was going to the ocean and spending a week there. I love the beach, the shore, the breeze, the clouds, the sunsets, just being there and listening to the water. So these are the two bedtime stories. Um, the dreaded night sleep waits. The ache of longing settles like fog, shuddering to day's monotony. Too many misplaced, mistaken meanings. Yet for now I linger to see breathless the moon, night landscape of parked cars, no one left to drive them through empty streets in shadows. But wait, the night possum comes with luminous eyes and pointy ears. I hold my breath and wait. The second one, I close my eyes today, a rum smoked pudding of pleasure, done with busy comings and goings. Tonight I do not fear the dark. I'll dream of long-necked birds flying the shoreline, our grandchildren running an abandoned beach, small campfires flickering along the coast, where the last bedtime stories are being told. We hold each other and watch the flames.
I just have one. Um, it's fresh off the pen, so there may be a hesitation or two. I am 8 or 9, and I begged my daddy to sit me on his lap and read me from the Britannica about the sun, how it is 93 million miles away. So far, the light takes 8.28 minutes at 186,000 miles per second to arrive here. And how big it is, 865,000 miles in diameter, 109 times that of Earth. I memorize these numbers and speak them to myself as I sit on a branch of the persimmon tree in the yard out back, dreaming of being an astronomer high on a mountain, discovering such things for the Britannica. And I ask him again to read me about the stars, about how far away they are, and I revel in pronouncing the progression, which I also dazzle him by memorizing: billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion, septillion, octillion, milestones to infinity. Such a bright little boy. Referring to the Scout manual, I gaze at the stars through binoculars and dream of owning a telescope. I have no interest in the constellations because I cannot see them with dotted lines like in the astronomy section. This, I think, is for simpletons. Such a bright little boy. I peer out into the blackness, seeing past the Bear and Scorpion, the Dippers, past quadrillion and sextillion light years, and into that cosmic question, what is it all in? My mind has raced too fast, without tether, and I've enveloped in a collapsing black shroud of fear. So I run inside and crawl into my bed to summon the dreams of tanks and trees and shuffleboard games, anything on the ground to escape the terror of the infinite sky. My father lazily wonders why I no longer ask him about the stars. I don't remember what I said, but I know I put him off, too shamed to admit. I also do recall I could not peer into the night sky for over 10 years, far beyond the time when I could crawl back into the safety of his lap, as I do now that he is gone, and I can tell him about my fear and listen for his answer.
There you go.
Okay, this poem was first drafted about 30 years ago, and the title is I Wish We Could Find Comfort in This. In the people reading about the COVID virus tonight makes me think that this poem is tangentially apropos. I wish we could find comfort in this. Last night and nightly now, I'm on a train running through graveyards inside cities. The only thing when I frightfully was awakened, a thin door to you, my neighbor, was between us. I cannot ask you to think of graveyards too. People seldom lift the rug to see if the floor is solid. I cannot look beneath your face, and I cannot look away from it. Sad songs love their sleeping. Time arrests it, and when freed, time is also taking flight. I do not mean to disturb your rest, which like an apple has closed its eyes. I describe you in all the languages in my body, and then you slip like a child out of her clothes. The description's all I have now to apply to generic things. The day I hated you and the next day you hated me back, decay slower than radioactive carbon in all life's forms. My simple mind keeps walking into the same river twice. When senses return, I know my bed doesn't vibrate like earth in the tray in Peru. No, it's at the most sedentary point. Graveyards, cities are only isolated lots, easily overlooked when you wake, groom, and zoom by. The curtains of nearby buildings are closed. Postulate then that therein no minds can exist.
Now,
All right. Okay, this is something I wrote last month, and it's, well, I said it, I use the same syllable count and rhyme scheme as this old folk song you may have heard of called The Poor Wayfaring Stranger. So I guess you could try to sing it if you had a ukulele or something, but, you know, forget about it. So also this makes some reference to Vincent van Gogh. So I'll call this Van Gogh interlude. On a trolley bus leaving Ballard, wires conduct electricity of the aural sun, thick with blackbirds, crying out in insanity. I hear an old blonde Ostrogoth woman with a raw cigarette cough, which spurs deep self-recrimination that's impossible to turn off. Now I listen to many decades of repartee whirling in my mind, like monotonous heavens arrayed with glittering stars to strike me blind. It is a long way from the small town, Missouri, where I entered noisily in a hospital of monitors that hung mechanically. When did I realize that my fate was in a far-flung gray city, adrift and partially insensate to my loud anonymity? Now I need the clouds that shaded all theirs from the strange intensity of the smoldering orb I've chased into another century. I need a respite in the slate blue calm of Dr. Gachet's sad gaze and the dark eyes of women to make the bed of my numbered days.
Very sterile hotel. So I decided to read an LA poem from January last year, before COVID. Driving on Pico Boulevard, January 2020. I should keep my eyes on the road driving on Pico, because in LA, we do much more in our cars than just drive. At one time or another, 80% of us have driven with our knees. I'm still working on steering with one hand, elbow casually crooked at the open window. Driving next to me, a woman smiles to herself. I see her multitasking, full volume Raven Black mascara, low volume Gregorian chant, an iced decaf oat milk latte, no soy milk as she carries the BRCA gene, no almond milk as she's heard there's a drought in the state. The man behind me puts down his nose hair trimmer as I watch him in the rearview mirror, picks up his phone to text the woman he is going to meet, not his wife. She is at that moment placing her hand over the real estate agent's hand in another house fresh to the overheated LA market. I should be aware of traffic ahead and behind, but I'm distracted by the growing pile of trash discarded on the sidewalk. I'm not talking about everyday litter, faded receipts, cigarette butts, hard lumps of gum, plastic popsicle sticks, a crap-filled diaper. Instead, I clock the 50s porcelain toilet bowl, a three-legged wicker-back chair lacking a seat, one mud-caked and blood-smeared sneaker, a stained sofa bed with a cushion carefully placed at one end, the corpse of a Christmas tree flocked with artificial snow and wrapped head to toe in plastic. Stopped at the lights, alternating between podcasts, death, sex, and money, and my favorite, murder, I idly wonder what time of day will it be when I spot a lifeless body right there in the trash at the side of the road, whether I'll have time to pull over, park, and take a photo before I call 911. And a second short poem 2 months later, March 16th, 2020. It's not as though it's Ebola, Beverly says. She cradles a crumpled plastic bag in her arms. They're eggplants. I hope you're not allergic. Despite my request, she refuses to put the bag by the door. I can't bend down, dear, not with my back these days. Beverly shoves the bag towards me, forcing me to take it. Freed, she exhales loudly. She stands 2 feet from me. I back up, praying she won't take this as an invitation to enter my house. I thank her for her gift. I look at the bag I'm holding. I look at the sweat on her upper lip. I try not to breathe. Beverly turns, leans on her stick, walks slowly down my drive. I wonder if I've thanked her enough. And as I lock my door, I wonder if, fresh from New York, I've just signed her death warrant. Thank you.
Forever, right? So I thought I'd read a poem. There's so much I could say about breakups and all that. You know, first of all, getting together in a pandemic and then breaking up in a pandemic is tricky as well. But I'm going to read a poem called Ours Alone, which I wrote a couple years ago. Ours Alone. Did I do it? I think I did it. I've been too bold again, haven't I? When I casually dropped how I longed to share an intimate relationship with someone again, I wasn't being very casual. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned how even though my plumbing works perfectly fine, I'm too young to call my vagina plumbing. Whose word is that? Or how I haven't been, pleased for a while. See, I've just been getting over a bad breakup these many, 4 years. Later, as I dared to be bold, I asked if you'd ever thought about me as half an us. Your A-frame hug and pats on my back needed no words. I know it will happen again one day, but when? It seems my me is too much for your you. That's cool. Without recoiling in shame, I'll say, I'm okay with that. It's me I want in the end. Maybe it's you I'll want in the end too, but for now I'm happy you're standing beside me on a knee. And one day I will find that I'm just the right fit for the shoe I'll call him. And he will be so fine for me, supportive in the arch, snug across the top, lenient in the toe, heel height just right, doesn't make my spine hurt. I believe that our lives are meant to be shared and to be sacred, to be truly ours alone. But how do humans ever find each other? They do. I know they do. We'll share ours alone, only not with each other. And honestly, I'm okay with this.
Myself. Okay. Thank you. And this is another, a recent poem about the pandemic that I've revised since last month. It's called 500,000. Winds blow across oceans, meander to gentle, long water reflected by an obelisk in Washington, D.C., or elsewhere in Dublin, sculpture of 4 swans with broad wings, the children of Lear. Up the steps, they honor the dead of the Troubles. We keep honoring the dead, plague of war, plague of disease. My president-elect looked out over lanterns lit to illuminate 400,000 American lives lost to COVID. Phalanx of long reflection, the Washington Monument. I recalled standing at Dublin's Garden of Remembrance, mosaic dust of the dead, wind on my face, blue-green waves in still water, spent swords and broken shields of the Irish dead. We bring art of our hands, spread veneer of healing like a warm cloak across the wide water of misery. Now, 1 month later, candles climb stairs at the White House portico as my president honors 500,000 COVID dead. Trumpets sound over silent prayer. This healing we do when we remember.